Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, may we all generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now we continue to study the sufferings of samsara, the sufferings of pretas in particular. Before talking about the suffering of pretas, I should clarify that the way we teach now is primarily based on the traditional ancient Buddhist methods of mind training. Nowadays, there are various interpretations in society. Some people denounce the ancient transmission of teachings, traditions, and customs as obsolete and abandon them altogether. It is unreasonable to go to that extreme, because we can more readily accept and embrace new things based on the foundation of old traditions. Only with the foundation of ancient traditions can we learn new things. Therefore, I believe that completely abandoning all ancient practices is an extreme. On the other end of the spectrum, there are those who do not acknowledge new ideas at all, be it advanced technology, skills and arts beyond ancient practices. Any kind of new innovation is not accepted by them, which is also incorrect. As Buddhists, we also need to keep up and advance with the times. If we don't, Buddhist thoughts will also be out of context with the times. Therefore, we should add some modern methods on the basis of the ancient ones. This is our basic attitude towards learning. It is my take on this matter. I've observed that, even among intellectuals today, some learn the Dharma strictly from sutras and treatises and refuse to accept new examples or ideas related to modern technology. This is particularly true for the elder generation of practitioners, monks, and masters, whose perspectives can be somewhat conservative. There are also some younger masters who are not very interested in the ancient practices or the examples in the sutras. They believe that one's thought must conform to the trends of the time, which makes it easier for people to accept Buddhism knowledge. However, as I mentioned before, this is also too extreme. If you completely discard the content of the sutras, such as teachings on impermanence and the sufferings of samsara, even though they undeniably exist, as many beings will fall into the realm of hungry ghosts after death, and if we don't address this at all but only talk about mundane matters like food, clothing, and shelter, then from a true Buddhist perspective, I feel that this approach is also inappropriate. The attitude towards Dharma is irresponsible. Therefore, when teachers transmit the Dharma in the future, Buddhism's basic foundational knowledge must remain unchanged. Despite modernizing Buddhism or making it systematic and digital, the original teachings about the suffering in hell realms, hungry ghost realms, and animal realms, their causes and categories, these cannot be altered. If you were to change these, with your own discursive thoughts and pleasing words, you are in fact leading these beings onto the wrong path and failing to explain the true conditions of suffering and happiness in future lives. Therefore, when I teach you the words of my perfect teacher and the aspiration prayer of Sukhavati, basically my pedagogical approach is in accord with that of the past eminent masters. My teaching uses Buddhist stories and scriptural authority as the foundation. Sometimes to maintain interest and avoid seeming too rigid, we occasionally add a few modern examples to illustrate the points. This approach of combining traditional teachings with contemporary examples, though, might not seem particularly engaging to some urban dwellers who are used to more dynamic presentations. Still, the core teachings must remain unchanged. When discussing Buddhist stories and the sufferings of pretas, while good practitioners can immerse their hearts in it, others may find it less comfortable or soothing than the various theories in society today, but we must be responsible to sentient beings. We must thoroughly explain the most fundamental thoughts contained in the Dharma. For example, the words of my perfect teacher and other teachings. We must strive to bring out and convey the most inherent ideas. So, I believe this approach should benefit most people. At the same time, introducing the foundations of the preliminary practices is crucial not just for me, but also for many of the Dharma teachers here, including some lay practitioners. Once you have a certain level of capability, when you want to share all the Buddhist knowledge within your own mind stream with others, you don't necessarily have to start by transmitting all your profound insights or the highest teachings. You might be overwhelmed by so many people wanting to learn Dharma from you, but one should start with the most basic and foundational practices. I think many of the Dharma teachers present, when teaching the Dharma to others in the future, will definitely start with the basics. This is my expectation. When learning the sufferings of the three lower realms, we must contemplate the sufferings of samsara. The sufferings of samsara can sometimes arise in one's mind stream from a relatively simple cause. Recently, some fellow practitioners asked me a question. How should one cultivate the view of impermanence in one's mind stream that is conducive to the mind of renunciation? Some say meditating on coarse impermanence is sufficient, while others believe one must contemplate subtle impermanence. At that time, I provided some reasoning in my response. Later, I thought more about it. If one has to genuinely generate conviction of subtle impermanence, then even many eminent monks and great masters had not met the requirements. When they first renounced the worldly life or developed the view of impermanence, they had not necessarily discerned the impermanence of all phenomena, especially according to the Sarvastivada or Theravada perspectives, which emphasize the doctrine of momentary impermanence. Generally speaking, according to the Abhidharma view, as we all know, Shravakas believe in the inherent existence of indivisible particles and indivisible time, a realist's view that asserts the real existence of entities, which is not in accord with the doctrine of emptiness that asserts otherwise. But this doesn't prevent them from generating view of impermanence, as is the case from biographies of some gurus. One doesn't have to meditate on subtle impermanence to generate renunciation. Take, for example, Dzogchen Sherabtra, a great tantric master among the Mahasiddhas. He initially generated renunciation in his mind stream in a very simple way. When he was 13, his family arranged a marriage for him. In mainland China, you call such a bride as a child bride. From childhood, they arranged a young girl for him. Around age 13, he had a child bride. Once Dzogchen, as a tantrika, a Nagpa, was reading scriptures in bed when there was a flood outside, and his wife came to tell him about it. "There's a flood. Go block it right away." Dzogchen was wearing a new underskirt that his wife had made for him. He put on the underskirt and went to block the flood. He worked hard for quite a while and got the new underskirt stained. His wife later noticed and was upset, saying, "How on earth did you make the new clothes so dirty?" She was expressing her displeasure. Later, Dzogchen felt a bit annoyed and said, "You don't care about me. You only care about a piece of clothing." He then took off the skirt and threw it away, saying he didn't want it anymore. His wife also got very angry and went back home. When Dzogchen thought about it, he felt that samsara was completely meaningless. From that moment, he began to develop renunciation. At that time, he didn't contemplate the subtle moment-to-moment impermanence. There was another incident later, what happened when he went back and how their assets were divided. Although it is the biography of a great eminent master, it still includes many detailed stories that, on the surface, seem no different from modern worldly quarrels, divorces, and remarriages. There are many, many details in their biographies, but it seems that you are not interested in hearing about these, so I won't go into them. What I'm conveying here is that, whether practicing on the impermanence of life or the sufferings of samsara, including the suffering of pretas, it is the key that after contemplation, we must develop a strong sense of renunciation from every aspect of samsara. This aversion is the goal of our study and our practice of the Dharma. After this, you won't have excessive attachment to this life. Although we appear to depend on provisions to sustain our lives, such as eating, walking and sleeping, etc., we won't have a strong clinging to them. Especially, we won't believe that the provisions and all the other things exist inherently. This is particularly crucial. Regarding the suffering of pretas or hungry ghosts, there are many classification methods. Here, pretas are classified into those who live collectively and those who move through space. In the treatise on the foundation for yoga practitioners, pretas are classified into those who suffer from external obscurations, those who suffer from internal obscurations, and those devoid of obstructions, also known as unobstructed ghosts. The unobstructed ghosts are quite similar to the pretas who suffer from specific obstructions, who have no obstacles regarding food but face other hindrances. In the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom, pretas are classified into those who enjoy happiness and those who are constantly starving. The type of ghost experiences joy and happiness similar to that of the celestial beings. In the Abhidharma Mahavibhasa Shastra, pretas are classified into those who have majesty and those who don't. The Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma has the broadest classification, which categorizes pretas into 36 types. I went through the text recently and found it really good. I read it recently. It's excellent and highly recommended for fellow practitioners. The text may be printed out and distributed to everyone at Larungar so that you can read it, and then you will be more aware of your actions, because careless actions can lead to rebirth as pretas. For example, the cause of being reborn as a Dharma-eating preta is to teach Dharma for personal sustenance. The cause of being reborn as a meat-eating preta is to eat meat and run a meat business by employing deceptive means in its dealing. The cause of being reborn as an incense-eating preta is to charge a premium price for inferior incense. The cause of being reborn as a Mara bodies preta is to fill one's mind stream with wrong views, not believing in cause and effect or authentic teachings, and to preach false paths to others. There are many such types of hungry ghosts. What causes led to rebirth in these realms? I hope Dharma fellows at Larungar study thoroughly the teaching in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma. For those of you who are not at Larungar, since you navigate the internet every day and spend your days wandering in cyberspace, you may download the text online or spend a few cents to print it out. You should print out the 36 types of pretas and take a good look at them. Maybe you will gain significant insights in your own mind stream. From one perspective, you will realize that countless beings are reborn and suffer as such hungry ghosts at this very moment. In addition, you will remind yourself to be careful about your own actions of body, speech, and mind. If we don't pay attention, we may be creating the causes to fall into the realm of pretas. There might be more explanations later, but the bottom line is that we must always be mindful of the causes that lead to the 3 lower realms. Whether we study the sufferings in the hell realms or in the preta realms, I explained the causes of being reborn in the cold and hot hells, as well as the primary causes of becoming a preta, which will be further introduced in the following sections. The first scripture mentioned is the True Attainment Treatise, written by Indian master Harivarman and translated by Kumarajiva. It says, being stingy and greedy with food, drink, and other things causes rebirth in the realm of pretas. Here it is stated that the fundamental cause to be reborn as a preta is greed. According to the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, it says, being reborn as pretas is because of stinginess, greed, and jealousy. Here the causes of being reborn as pretas also include jealousy, in addition to stinginess and greed. During our interactions with others, jealousy can easily arise. As we study the text below on the sufferings of pretas, I hope that each one of us should contemplate and reflect on this teaching from various aspects. As said in the Beacon of Certainty, beginning practitioners should do analytical meditation, other than just close their eyes and think of nothing. For example, when meditating on the suffering of pretas, you are supposed to first theoretically accept the existence of such a preta realm. There are some that we can see among animals, while those pretas who move through space cannot be seen by our eyes. Another type, as mentioned in other sutras, exists underground with its own primary cities. So, you must acknowledge that pretas are real. Given their existence, what are their sufferings? What are the causes and conditions for rebirth as a preta? Let's make an aspiration that in the future, no beings, including ourselves, will be reborn in such realms. Those who have already been reborn, they are truly pitiable. Whenever we have even just a little food left spilled on the ground, we should recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra and dedicate it to the hundreds and thousands of hungry ghosts with a compassionate intention. This is extremely necessary. Many ancient sages and eminent masters often did such beneficial acts for sentient beings. The text is as follows. There are pretas who live collectively and who move through space. The first type of pretas, who live collectively, suffer from external, internal or specific obscurations. This classification is very similar to that in the stages of the Yogacara. According to the comprehensive records chronicles of the Buddhas, authored by Nianchang in Yuan Dynasty, China, there are 4 kinds of pretas. Those who suffer from external obscurations, those who suffer from internal obscurations, those who cannot get food, and those who cannot eat food. Specifically, pretas who suffer from external and internal obscurations are the same that Patrul Rinpoche mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher. The pretas who cannot get food are able to find delicious food, but cannot reach it. Because many Yama's henchmen are guarding it, and those pretas have no right to eat it. When the pretas who cannot eat food put food into their mouths, the food turns into iron pellet or copper liquid, which burns their entire bodies. This is the karmic effect they experience. Therefore, the teaching and stories in Han Buddhism is basically the same as that in Tibetan Buddhism. We shouldn't assume that the practical guidance in the words of my perfect teacher is unique to Tibetan Buddhism and is never seen in Han Buddhism. In my commentary of the aspiration prayer of Sukhavati, almost all the Buddhist stories I quoted can be found in the Chinese Tripitaka. It is the same for my teaching of the words of my perfect teacher. Apart from a very few Tibetan examples, all the quotations from sutras and shastras can also be found in the Chinese Tripitaka too. It's just that they were not taught in such an emphasized way like this in the past. Nowadays, some practitioners who solely follow Han Buddhism tend to assume that Tibetan Buddhism differs significantly from Han Buddhism, which is an unreasonable statement. As Mipham Rinpoche says in The Unity of Three Precepts, actually all schools and lineages do not contradict each other, like the descendants passed down from the same father. However, if one considers oneself separate, then it's like isolating oneself. Therefore, when you follow a specific lineage or take disciples in the future, You should first establish the view that the lineages don't contradict each other. Without establishing this understanding, one will encounter various obstacles when studying Buddhism. Our fabricated thoughts sometimes can possess significant power. If left unchecked, they can obstruct both temporary happiness in this life and ultimate happiness in future existences. The text now explores the pretas suffering from external obscurations, who suffer such extreme deprivation that even the mere concept of water remains unknown to them for hundreds of years. These external obscurations encompass the entire surrounding environment, creating a realm of profound and unrelenting suffering. Due to their karma, pretas experience a complete absence of food and drink. They are perpetually consumed by hunger and thirst, endlessly wandering in search of sustenance. Like starving dogs, they desperately seek nourishment everywhere, yet remain perpetually unsuccessful in obtaining even the smallest morsel or drop of liquid. There are a few situations. Starving pretas occasionally glimpse a distant, clear, green-flowing river. With rigid, fragile limbs barely supporting their massive, distended bellies, they experience extraordinary pain and exhaustion. Staggering and struggling, they painfully drag themselves forward with immense effort. Upon finally reaching the river, they discover only a completely dry riverbed, with not a single drop of water remaining. Thus, they feel immense suffering and agony. It is a great pity for beings to be reborn as pretas. The Buddha speaks of the differences in karmic retribution for Elder Shuka Sutra, explains various causes and conditions for the rebirth as pretas. The Retribution of Preta Sutra also lists causes that Modgalyayana knew regarding rebirth as pretas. I advise you to take a look at the sutra at your convenience. Modgalyayana expounded on the various pains and experiences of pretas. In the human realm, when we see some food from afar, the food is still the same when we come close to it. For example, if there is an apple over there and I really want to eat it, when I come near to get it, the apple won't become something else. However, it's a different story in the realm of pretas. First, the pretas suffering from external obscurations cannot see or find food in the external environment. And even if they can see it, due to their karmas, the food either disappears in front of them or becomes something inedible. It says in sutras that those who used to offer unclean food and drink to others will be reborn as pretas, and that their food will turn into something filthy or impure matter that smells horribly foul. Sometimes they see distant orchards of lush, fruit-laden trees. Struggling with their massive, bloated bodies, they painfully approach what seems like a promising oasis. However, upon arrival, they find only withered, completely dried tree trunks. What appeared to be a potential source of nourishment or shade transforms into another cruel mirage, leaving them once again with nothing. Sometimes pretas catch a tantalizing glimpse of diverse, abundant foods and delectable offerings. However, when they approach, they are violently confronted by fully armed guards who mercilessly beat and drive them away using various weapons. The resulting suffering is beyond description. When they get close, they cannot enjoy it at all. There are countless guards who start whipping them with various weapons. Some scriptures describe these hungry ghosts as being covered in wounds, suffering greatly. The Sutra on Removing Fear, Misfortune, and Anxiety, or in Sanskrit, the Śrikantha Sutra. This sutra also introduces the sufferings of these pretas. Once when the Buddha was crossing a river along with his retinue, he encountered 84,000 pretas halfway through crossing. Pretending he did not already know, the omniscient Buddha asked them, "What did you do in past lives that caused you to be reborn as pretas in this life?" The pretas answered, "Although we encountered the Buddha in a past life, We neither recognized the existence of the Buddha nor believed in the Buddha. We neither understood the Dharma nor believed in it. We neither recognized the existence of Sangha nor believed in them. Instead, when we saw other false teachings and wrong views, we were excited and extremely delighted. Because of such karma, we have been reborn in the realm of pretas. The Buddha asked, "How long have you been pretas?" According to some scriptures, they answered, "We have been here for 70,000 years." Sometimes we see water from afar, but when we approach it, it vanishes without a trace. Sometimes we see great rivers, but when we get near, there are many guardians who prevent us from drinking. We have no rights at all, and thus we suffer greatly. The pretas replied this way. There are descriptions of this exchange in various texts. We really should read more of these Buddhist scriptures, which have great benefits for our mind stream. However, many people in modern society today are not interested in these useful scriptures or any of the crystallizations of wisdom. Instead, they are attracted to writings of modern people with fabricated thoughts, which seem reasonable on the surface, but actually cater to greed and hatred. This truly reflects the current karma of sentient beings. Practitioners should read the Tripitaka more often. As for me, each time I read a good Dharma book, or find good scriptural reference and examples, I feel immense joy, this indescribable feeling in my heart. I believe many of you here may share the same feeling with me. On the other hand, topics about wars, worldly matters, buying weapons, or clothes are of little meaning for spiritual growth because they have nothing to do with liberation from the samsara. Why didn't the Buddha emphasize the details of the material world in the sutras? The reason is that liberation from samsara is of utmost importance. Attaining liberation from cyclic existence of births and deaths is crucial. There is a good analogy on this issue in the Sutra of the King of Law. For example, a person's body is pierced by a poisoned arrow. If you don't pull the arrow out immediately, but instead analyze where the bamboo for the shaft came from, what kind of feathers were used for the fletching, the quality of the arrow, and who shot it, by the time you finish investigating, then the person may die before the arrow is removed. There's no time left. If he pulls the arrow out immediately, there is a chance and hope for him to survive. Similarly, in our short lives, the most important thing is to transcend life and death. If we put this aside and instead conduct meticulous research on the macro and micro worlds, we may exhaust our entire lifespan without getting the essential knowledge. Thus, as Atisha said, among all the vast knowledge, one should extract the most useful, just as swans extract milk from a mixture of water and milk. Similarly, in this diverse world, it is pointless to introduce every bit of knowledge one by one. This is why the Buddha mainly spoke about the Four Noble Truths: suffering, its origin, cessation, and the path. So, for everyone here, it's true that we need a general understanding of worldly knowledge and skills. Knowing nothing at all would be a problem since we still have to live in this world. Making the Buddha's doctrine shine forth also needs to conform to this world, so a basic understanding is necessary. However, it is pressing that time is running out for us. If we spend our short lifespan entirely on pursuing worldly knowledge and fail to prepare for our deaths, then when facing death, no matter how much worldly knowledge we possess, it will not be of any help. Thus, the previous analogy illustrates that in this world, attaining liberation from the cyclic existence of births and deaths is the utmost important. Everyone should remember this in their hearts. To attain liberation, we must first know the sufferings of samsara. Then we need to find ways to avoid falling into the lower realms. It's like driving to a certain destination. On the way there, you need to avoid all the dangerous spots on the road. There's a pit here, and a cliff there, You must not go to those places that would put you in a dangerous position, as falling off a cliff would be fatal, so you must be aware. You must aim towards the path of liberation, clearly understanding the purpose of your spiritual practice. For these pretas, even natural phenomena become instruments of torment. In summer, moonlight burns like fire, while in winter, sunlight feels icily cold. They are subjected to relentless, extreme suffering. To the pretas, the summer moonlight, which is supposed to be cool, feels extremely hot. In winter, the sunlight, which should be warm, feels cold due to their karmic perception. As described in the Letter to a Friend by Nagarjuna, the 4 seasons appear reversed for pretas. And according to the Four Noble Truths treatise that was written by an Indian scholar and later translated by Master Paramartha, in this treatise, the descriptions of sunlight and moonlight are quite fitting. The moonlight is as hot as the summer sun. The blow of wind feels like a blazing fire. The drops of rain are like boiling molten copper. The walk on the ground is like stepping on hot ashes. This means that for special beings, particularly pretas, moonlight is as scorching as the summer sun. When a gentle breeze touches their bodies, it feels like being burned by flames. For us, when the breeze blows against our bodies, it feels cool and comfortable. Our monastery has become increasingly pleasant in recent days. If the monastery were to have such a hot wind, not quite like flames, but as warm as firelight, I would be a bit afraid. Now, it's getting colder and colder, and it snowed heavily this morning. Imagine when it rains. The raindrops feel like boiling molten copper pouring down on the body. The skin all over the body would completely fester. Walking on the ground would feel like walking on burning hot sand or stepping into a pit of embers. This is what the pretas would experience. However, when we describe this in words, some people, especially those who do not have a good understanding of the karmic law of cause and effect, may not fully appreciate it. But for those who have unwavering faith in karma and rebirth, there are countless sentient beings who are pitifully suffering right now. Therefore, after performing virtuous deeds, we must dedicate the merit. Next, I'll share a story about Śroṇa's experience in the realm of pretas. Śroṇa is also known as the elder of 100 million ears in the Vinaya texts. Some texts refer to him as having ears that could hear hundreds of millions. This was because when Śroṇa was born, he had golden earrings on his earlobes. He came into the world wearing earrings, so people called him the elder of 100 million ears, or the elder of jewel earrings. Was it said that later, when Buddha Shakyamuni often brought Śroṇa with him, Śroṇa still wore his earrings? Once, while Śroṇa was in the realm of the pretas, the intensity of their greed was so toxic that it gave him a fever and left his mouth utterly parched. Before the gates of an iron city, he saw a chilling hungry ghost with black face and red eyes, an especially terrifying hungry ghost. Śroṇa urgently asked where to find water. As soon as his words fell, suddenly a large crowd gathered. Many hungry ghosts appeared, their bodies resembling burned tree trunks, their desperate forms clustering together in search of sustenance. In the Vinaya Sutra, it mentions that there were about 500 hungry ghosts. Anyhow, they all crowded forward anxiously, pleading, "Most precious Master, please have mercy, give us just a little water." They all gathered before him. The Venerable One responded, "I cannot get even a single drop of water myself. I too am searching for water." When he asked who they were, they answered miserably, "We've lived in this valley for about 12 years, and up until today, we'd never even heard anyone say the word water." This story is from the Karma Vastu section in the monastic code of the Mulasarvastivada, which is part of the text called 17 Matters. This story is fully documented. On the way back from his treasure hunting trip at the ocean, Śroṇa accidentally arrived at a place of pretas. The happening is the same as that in the above story. Later he asked the pretas, "What caused your rebirth as pretas?" The pretas replied in unison, "When we were in the human realm, we were stingy with our wealth and never made any offerings. As a result, we are pretas in this life." This story is recorded in the sutra and is also available in Chinese translations. When convenient, it is best to take a look. After being reborn as pretas, they went for 12 years without even hearing the word water. Yet, due to their karma manifesting, they are still alive. As for us human beings, not to mention 12 years, surviving 12 days without water can be very challenging. There was a case during a tsunami where a person survived for 13 days, and it was widely reported as a miracle. Normally, it is extremely difficult for someone to survive without eating or drinking for so long. However, due to their karma manifesting, pretas can indeed have such long lifespans. In the Century of Noble Deeds, in Sanskrit, the Avadana Shataka Sutra, there is a story about Uttara's mother who was reborn as a preta. How, not long after the birth of Uttara, his father passed away. His mother raised him and she treated him exceptionally well. The mother and son lived a good and prosperous life together. Later, Uttara wanted to become a monk, but his mother found out and absolutely forbade it. His mother was strongly against this idea, telling him, "As long as I am alive, you are not allowed to become a monk. When I'm dead, you can do whatever you want. Until then, no matter what, I will not agree." Without any way out, Uttara prepared to commit suicide, thinking, "If my mother doesn't agree with my choice, there is no better solution than to die before my parents." People nowadays might simply say, "Go ahead then." When Uttara prepared to take his life, his mother told him, "Don't choose this path. Though I oppose your becoming a monk, I will nevertheless consent for you to make offerings to Sramanas and Brahmins. That is, from now on, as long as you want to make offerings to spiritual practitioners, I will prepare everything so that you can offer it to them as you wish." For a temporary period, Uttara would make offerings daily to many Buddhists and monks. Once, while Uttara was not at home, his mother, acting particularly maliciously, threw out all the food, saying, "You monks do nothing all day and just eat other people's food. What do you do exactly? Get out of here," and drove them all away. When Uttara returned, his mother lied to him, saying, "Today, these venerable ones came, and the offering was very successful. You should be happy." Uttara believed her and was very happy. Later, when his mother died, he assumed she had definitely attained liberation from all the offerings she made. After his mother died, Uttara got ordained as a monk as he hoped. Which reminded me that the other day, someone said to me, "I really wish my mother would pass away sooner so I can ordain, as she never allows me to become a monk." That's what he said. He should repent for such thoughts. Om benza sattva hum. After Uttara's mother died, he happily became a monk. It didn't say happily. That was added by me. Due to his diligent practice, soon he attained arhathood. Once Uttara was meditating in a cave by a river, he suddenly noticed an ugly preta who painfully came close to him and said, "I was your mother. I have been living as a preta for 20 years. Uttara then asked, "How come? You've made so many offerings and provided food to the monastics in your lifetime, so how is it that you are now reborn as a preta?" She replied, although I had many good deeds. The one unfortunate act was that, when you were not around, I scolded the monks with harsh words. As a result of this karma, I was reborn as a preta. Now, attaining liberation is extremely difficult for me. You must make offerings to the monks and dedicate the merit to me. So he did, and after his first dedication of merit from offering food and rededication of merit, she was reborn as a preta moving through space. It was after the second food offering. His mother was finally reborn in the celestial realm. As you can see, pretas have to endure an extremely long time without food and drink. Next, we'll discuss pretas suffering from internal obscurations. These pretas possess mouths so small that they scarcely exceed the size of a needle's eye. Even if they were to drink all the water in the vast oceans, by the time it passed through their throats, narrow as a horsehair. Can you imagine a throat as narrow as a horsehair? How could any water even get through? Don't mention that the heat of their breath would have evaporated any bit of water they had taken in. Because hungry ghosts emit toxic vapors that dry everything up. Even if they somehow managed to swallow a little, their stomachs, vast as a basin, would never be filled. When we studied geography, there were 4 basins, Sichuan Basin. What else? I've forgotten. There is also the Tarim Basin in Xinjiang province. Oh well, never mind. Speaking of basins, I remember there was a teacher named Mr. Wang. He taught us in middle school. It feels like now I'm starting to have past life recollections. Back from memory lane to the text now. The pretas have stomachs as big as basins. They cannot be satisfied. Even if, at last, they acquired enough to feel satisfied and the food reached their stomachs, it would combust during the night, scorching their lungs, heart, and entrails. When they try to move, they are unable to lift their enormous basin-sized bellies with their thin, grass-like limbs, causing them immense pain and suffering. In the miscellaneous aspects of sutras and Vinaya, compiled by the author Baochang, it is mentioned that 500 hungry ghosts by the Ganges River were suffering immensely at that time. The Buddha was also there. At that time, these pretas couldn't even see the water of the Ganges. They said to the Buddha, "We are being tormented by thirst and are about to die. Our lives have reached the limit." The Buddha said, "Drink the water of the Ganges." The pretas replied, "It is water in the Tathagata's eyes, but it is flame in our eyes. It's impossible for us to drink it." The Buddha said, "Only by dispelling your deluded thoughts can you see the water." Then he started to extensively explain the faults of stinginess. The pretas begged, "We have been thirsty for too long. Although we hear the Dharma, it cannot infiltrate into our minds. May you please give us some water first, and then we'll continue with the teaching." Through his clairvoyance and blessing, the Buddha made them drink well, then continued to teach them the Dharma. The pretas all generated bodhicitta, and eventually were liberated from the realm of pretas. So, the rivers and lakes that we normally see would for pretas be filled with either pus and blood or fire. Even if the poor pretas suffering from internal obscurations managed to drink a little water, it would transform into fire in their bellies. Thus, we must remember that there are countless pretas suffering from internal obscurations in this world. After consuming food, it all turns into flames inside their bodies. In our human world, the suffering that some humans are experiencing is no different from that of pretas. For example, Patients of esophageal cancer cannot eat anything, and if they swallow a bite of food, their throats hurt as if they were burnt by fire. This is a very similar karmic effect. Of course, however painful the experience in the human realm is, it is incomparable to that in the realm of pretas. Some people can barely endure the hunger if they skip meals for one day, or just postpone one meal for 2 or 3 hours. People often say, "Oh, I didn't eat anything for the whole day. What should I do? I'm starving. It's unbearably painful." But however hungry we feel as a human, the suffering is far less than that of pretas. Therefore, when we meditate, we should reflect on this. No matter how much suffering exists in the human world, it's not as severe. Of course, there are rare cases of people dying from starvation, which surely is very painful. It is crucial to observe and contemplate these sufferings happening in this world, to strengthen our spiritual practice. This is extremely important. All right, we'll stop here for today.